Hello and welcome to Series 8, Episode 5 of Inside Number 9, where this week we'll be on the buses with Steve, Rhys and Robin Asquith. And there's plenty of room up top, nudge nudge, wink wink, say no more. I hope you've all got your tickets ready and that you're all on board for a jolly good carry-on, as we discuss, hold on, there's something not quite right about this review, is there? Before we carry on towards our destination, can I just check that you're already aware of this week's replacement service? Because if you're not, and you don't want me to spoil the surprise, and you've somehow managed to avoid all talk of Number 9 on social media this week, then I'm afraid this bus terminates here. Thank you for travelling with us. Sorry we've already reached your stop, but don't worry, I'll be driving by here again next week to discuss Episode 6, The Last Weekend. Remember to subscribe and ring the bell so that you can be one of the first on board. As for the rest of you, hello and welcome to possibly the greatest bait and switch I've ever seen in my life. I'm still reeling from it and still having a right good time on social media. This really blew up, didn't it? 3x3 came as a big surprise to us Number 9 fans, as our scheduled programme was changed at the very last minute to announce a brand new quiz show hosted by Lee Mack. And I do enjoy a good quiz, so I was game. Just to recap, and also for the benefit of anyone outside of the fandom who clicked this video wondering what all the fuss was about, here's the full story. For many years now, Inside Number 9 fans have been begging Steve Pemberton and Rhys Shearsmith to write an episode set aboard a Number 9 bus. And why not? We've had Number 9 houses, flats, train carriages, studios, even a size Number 9 shoe. But the show's creators have been somewhat reluctant to commit to this idea, to say the least. Rhys in particular has been quite vocal on the subject. However, it looked like the fans had finally got their wish when Series 8 of the show listed Hold On Tight as its 5th episode, complete with official artwork, promotional shots of the actors in costume, trailer clips, and even the casting announcement of Robin Asquith, who appeared in the poster and the shots alongside Rhys and Steve. And given the style of the promos, along with Asquith's background in bawdy British comedies, it looked like we were all set for a campy 70s style romp. But once we reached the episode's airtime of 10 PM on Thursday the 18th of May, a BBC continuity announcement mentioned a change in the schedule. BBC Two then launched into the opening of a new quiz show, hosted by Lee Mack, leaving us all to wonder, what on earth is happening? There was no Inside Number 9 title card, no sign of Steve Pemberton or Rhys Shearsmith, and the broadcast started playing out just like an ordinary TV quiz show. And while Hold On Tight had been officially billed for this time slot, apparently if you checked a digital TV guide at the time, then it listed the new quiz show instead of Inside Number 9. What the actual? However, many of us kept watching mainly because of two things. One, that the show was titled 3x3 and had 9 contestants. 2, that the Number 9 lads had pulled off a similar stunt almost 5 years ago when the broadcast for their Halloween special appeared to malfunction and a repeat of an earlier episode started showing in its place. Everything seemed normal until it wasn't. Inspired by 1992's Ghostwatch, which I've also reviewed on this channel by the way, Deadline was designed to go wrong, to create the impression that the studio was haunted. Twitter was abuzz that night, many viewers had already switched off, and the whole thing turned out to be an incredibly bold stunt that played into the live viewing experience. You wouldn't think such a thing could be achieved in this day and age, but by God they pulled it off. So, last Thursday, with a captive audience and a penchant for past pranks, could the same thing be happening again? Once again, I'll give you the chance to stop the video here and check it out for yourself on catch up. Am I sending you off to watch Inside Number 9? Or am I completely pranking you and making you watch a random quiz show for half an hour? You'll just have to go and find out. So then, if you're still with us, yes, this was the new episode of Inside Number 9, and what an absolute belter it was. I know I've been talking for quite a bit now already, and I haven't even started talking about the episode itself, but I have a lot to say about 3x3. I must also say that after the last couple of episodes, where some of the twist endings turned out to be a bit predictable, this whole thing knocked us for 6. And I'm sorry to all those folks still waiting on the bus episode. Annoying when those things don't turn up, isn't it? I hope you enjoyed what we got instead, and if you didn't, I would strongly encourage you to watch it again knowing what you know now, because the subtlety and the hints included in 3x3 make for quite the backstory once you know what's really going on. Maybe you still won't enjoy it, which is a shame, but then you can't please everyone, and I hope we can at least admire a show that's still willing to take risks long into its 8th series. But hey, if you really had a hankering to see a number 9 bus in action that night, then you could have switched channels and watched Summer Holiday on BBC4, featuring a London bus for Piccadilly. Guess which number is on the front? Anyway, 3x3's opening credits are suitably cheap and cheerful for a UK TV quiz show, and our host is Lee Mack, famous for numerous popular quizzes, including Would I Lie to You and They Think It's All Over. A hashtag appears in the corner to promote the new quiz, and so far it all looks very plausible. We're introduced to our guests, many of whom are played by relatively unknown actors. Some have 0 credits on IMDb apart from this episode, including the incredible Saskia Wakefield. I might be getting ahead of myself here, but I think we may have just witnessed the beginning of an explosive acting career. Absent is the usual number 9 title screen, and there's no sign of the show's creators, who have appeared in virtually every episode to date. I say virtually because back in Series 1 we had 1 episode without Steve and 1 without Rhys, but since then they've appeared in every instalment. So far the show appears to be a harmless quiz show, even if it was shown in an unusually late time slot. But if we pay close attention, we can see hints that this isn't what it seems and that the number 9 lads are most definitely behind it. For example, we have a team name inspired by Christopher Biggins. Bit of an obscure pun for your average group of young LARPers, unless of course they watch Psychoville. We also had a quiz question on Witchfinder General, Trial of Elizabeth Gadge anyone? And there was one very subtle hint in a gag about the 3 Tenors team name, which is quite similar to a joke between Iris Krell and Judy Levinson in the League of Gentlemen live at Drury Lane. I haven't seen anyone else mention this one yet, so maybe that's just a sign I need to get out more. And while we're talking about connections to other episodes, when I searched the title 3x3 online, one of the first results I got was about solving Rubik's Cubes, which ties us in very neatly with last week's Love is a Stranger. Coincidence? Honestly, I just don't know anymore. While watching, I had some thoughts about where a number 9 quiz show might go. Was this some weird post-apocalyptic reality where we don't talk about the event? Is there far more at stake than just the cash prize, and are they competing for their freedom or possibly their lives? Because some of those contestants look pretty tense. Was it about to go all Squid Game on us, or maybe like that Simpsons episode where they enter the Japanese quiz show that punishes ignorance? Were the contestants who got eliminated actually going to be eliminated? It certainly would have made the quickfire round a lot more dramatic. Aside from a few subtle hints, the quiz show plays out as you might expect, and the format appears to work. I've certainly seen worse concepts for quizzes. I even found myself getting lost in the game and sitting at home trying to answer the questions instead of looking for clues. I didn't do too badly, if I may say so myself. And it was Steve and Rhys who wrote the script, so I can give them kudos for being great question setters, and that's not as easy as you might think. Lee Mack really uses his hosting experience here, and I think there might have been a little improvisation in his part too. He is an actor as well as a quiz show host, but here it's near impossible to tell that he's playing a part. The contestants feel mostly very natural too. I say mostly because there's some slight awkwardness you can sense from the Oakwood family. Mind you, some people just come across as awkward or intense, especially when put in front of a camera. However, I was half expecting to see a domestic breakout between Team Christopher Bigwins, especially given their relationship dynamic. I know Steve and Rhys do well creating this kind of tension. See Charlie and Stella from the League of Gentlemen for more details. But the longer it goes on, with little to no action, the more you ask yourself, where are they going with this one? Now, I'm about to go into deep spoilers. I think that's my 3rd spoiler warning of this video already. This next part is for those of you who've already seen the ending, and I'm going to do something a bit unusual for an episode review, and give some deeper character analysis, along with a scene-by-scene recap of the episode itself. What can I say? I just really got into this one. For those who haven't seen it yet, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the show. And for the rest of you, fingers on the buzzers, and away we go. First up, here's everything I could figure out about the Oakwoods. Catherine Oakwood, the daughter of the family, possesses supernatural abilities through the use of her mind. We see evidence that she may be telepathic, is able to form some kind of two-way mind link, and might even be making some psychic predictions. She's also telekinetic, as she's able to slam the door shut at the end of the show and then make her mother's head explode. The fact that the mother immediately blames Catherine for shutting her in, as she's nowhere near the door at that point, tells us that she's already demonstrated this power at some point before. Catherine plans to pursue a master's degree in applied neuroscience, which is interesting given her abilities. Maybe she's looking for ways to enhance her powers, understand how her mind works, or both. But she isn't actually getting to attend university in person, and from the sounds of it, she hasn't seen very much of the world at all. Perhaps her parents are worried about Catherine's own safety, or are concerned about the safety of others, and that's why they don't let her out much. Or maybe they're just very cruel and controlling people and see her as nothing more than a science project that they can use to show off and earn themselves a bit of cash. Margaret Oakwood, Catherine's mother, is a clinical trials manager involved in the research and development of new medical protocols. This is presumably how Catherine got her powers, as some form of private medical experiment, one that's all set to turn on their own creator. Maybe Catherine was already angry about being forced to be a human guinea pig, for having powers that she never asked for, or maybe it's the implied threat of being confined to a basement that finally sets her off. Margaret says they like to have fun with board games and quizzes, much like this one, I imagine. There may be several reasons why she's brought her daughter onto a TV quiz show. Maybe as a sort of field experiment, maybe to keep Catherine's mind busy and out of trouble, or perhaps it was the prospect of being able to cheat thousands of pounds out of the BBC that drove them to it. Those experiments aren't going to fund themselves, after all. Margaret comes across as very cold in her mannerisms, and there doesn't seem to be much of a familial bond between her and the team. It makes me wonder if Catherine really is her daughter, who was then subjected to her mother's clinical trials, perhaps even before birth. Or if Catherine is a living experiment that was created in a lab and then raised in the Oakwood family home. Also, I'm not sure if this is a coincidence, but given the themes of a controlling mother and a telekinetic daughter, I think it's interesting that they gave this character the name Margaret, as in Margaret White, the mother of Stephen King's Carrie. We learn very little of the father, Stephen Oakwood, apart from the fact that he likes cricket and fruit scones. Maybe Stephen is as he appears, just a friendly but bland person, but I can't help but wonder if something has been done to his brain as well. I mean, I quite like Nottingham just feels like an odd, understated response from a supposedly big cricket fan. And is it just me, or does he have a bit of a blank stare going on? Maybe that's just how he is, or at least how he is in front of a camera. However, if Stephen is of sound mind, that means he's also complicit in keeping his daughter locked away, and is at least aware of his wife's experiments, if not directly involved in them. They also claim to have Catherine's great-grandmother Rosemary watching at home, which begs the question, how old is this woman? Has her lifespan been artificially extended thanks to one of Margaret's clinical trials, or is she just a really good age? That's all we ever hear about Rosemary, and maybe it's just a throwaway detail, but it still made me wonder. So, now that you've met the contestants, here's what happens in the show 3x3. Not much occurs in the first round, Three's a Crowd, aside from the Oakwood team deciding to leave Stephen out of the game rather than spending their cash to get him back in. We also get our first subtle hint at the mother-daughter mind link, as when Catherine asks her mum for advice, Margaret answers, "You know what I think." Indeed she does. Lee Mack also notes that Catherine doesn't react at all to his joke, which, to be fair, was pretty corny, but usual quiz show etiquette would merit a smile or a fake laugh. Maybe she's just under pressure, or maybe her mind is somewhere else, perhaps busy scrying for the correct answers. The two remaining Oakwoods move on to the quickfire round. Margaret gets another question wrong, which puts the pressure on Catherine to keep them in the game. Catherine answers a science question correctly, very believable given her chosen academic field. The next two answers go to the big wins, putting further pressure on the Oakwoods, but Catherine steals with another science question. She gets the next answer very quickly, about the Roald Dahl character Matilda, who also happened to be telekinetic. And she gets the next answer before the question is read out, and that's when we realise she's up to something. On our first watch, we might think that the game's been rigged, or that Catherine has somehow managed to cheat. But on rewatch, we might suspect that she predicted the Witchfinder General question using psychic abilities, or by reading the host's mind as he had the questions and answers on the card in front of him. When asked at the end of the round how she managed to do so well, Catherine says she's been practising, while looking knowingly at her mother. The Oakwoods just pipped the 3 tenors to the post, and they progressed to the next round 3-point turn. All the hints on the board are the names of animals, and I can't have been the only one looking for the word hare. When the Oakwoods choose bat, ending up with a cricket question, Margaret says, "We just need to put our minds together." She then gives the name of a golfer. She's not very good at this, is she? Before Catherine miraculously comes up with the answer, despite saying that she doesn't know any cricket players. Was she reading the mind of the host again, or was she able to make a connection with her dad backstage? The big ones then choose donkey, and Gavin's pretty confident that he might already know what the question is. Turns out it doesn't take a psychic to think this might relate to the character from Shrek. Gavin knows the answer, but his mind is blocked somehow. The name has just gone out of his head. At this point, it's worth noting that the Oakwoods are staring directly at him. Gavin says that David Jason is in his mind now, despite the rest of the team knowing that it must be wrong, but he's pushed for time, and so he gives the wrong answer. Catherine then gets it right and steals the square. The next question is music-themed, with monkey relating to the Arctic monkeys, which Margaret says sounds like a research project she was once involved in. Catherine then makes a strange remark: "We're not really allowed music at home." But Margaret tries to qualify that by saying, "We're more of a Radio 4 house." This gives the impression that Catherine's home life has been unusually strict, but that's probably something she's not supposed to talk about. While the other team are conferring, Margaret tells Catherine, "Just say what comes into your head," but Catherine responds, "I don't actually know it." However, after a brief silence, she manages to give the right answer anyway, taking her and her mother into the final round. It's possible that Catherine was reading the mind of the host again, or possibly from Team Bigwins, who did appear to know the answer. Or maybe her dad is backstage looking up the answers on his phone and sending them to Catherine's mind. Or, who knows, maybe Catherine has some kind of psychic connection to Google. It's now extremely obvious that something's not right, as the Oakwoods seem to be plucking the correct answers out of thin air. And we're left wondering how they did that, as there were some areas of knowledge that were completely unknown to them, even by their own admission. Side note, but by some astonishing coincidence, I'd actually been having a conversation only last week about the guy who was caught cheating in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. How weird is that? Am I psychic? Should I be trying my hand at quiz shows? Our last round is 3 blind twice, the big money final. To win, the Oakwoods must answer 3 questions with one of them sitting in a soundproof chamber, and they both have to give the right answer. Lee Mack asks them who wants to be locked up, which might have some accidentally sinister connotations when we think about Catherine's upbringing. He then jokingly asks her if there's anything she wants to get off her chest now that her mum can't hear, and then remarks that it looks like she's actually thinking about it. Yikes. With Margaret in the booth, Lee asks them a geography question, which they both get right in spite of another strange comment from Catherine: "I haven't really been anywhere." Just before they answer, the host asks, "Are you on the same wavelength?" And well, I think we all know the answer by now. Margaret then chooses to gamble on the next question, and Catherine complies, saying she has to do what she says. Lee Mack then makes a gag about calling Childline. Pretty dark, but it still gets a laugh out of the audience. The next question is about TikTok, which Catherine answers right away, and Margaret just about knows is a thing that exists. "All I'm seeing is an image of David Jason," she says. Don't know why I should be thinking of him, as she glares in Catherine's direction. Maybe this is a kind of residual effect from Catherine's last mental projection, but whatever it is, Margaret is having a mental block for some reason. After she says this, we see Catherine rubbing her nose. Could she feel it bleeding by any chance? Because if we weren't thinking of Stranger Things before this part, then we're definitely thinking about it now. Margaret, rather unconvincingly, gives the answer, and we move on to the potential final question. Now with £13,500 available to them, plus the chance to treble their winnings, Lee Mack asks each of the Oakwoods what they'd like to do with the money. Catherine would like to travel and see the world, something she's not been able to do before for whatever reason. She mentions New Zealand, or in other words, about as far away from her home as she could possibly get. Margaret says they'd like to dig out the basement as a place for Catherine to practice and carry out her studies, which she thinks would be a nice gift for her daughter. But I don't know, it all sounds a bit Fritzl to me. Our host says maybe you could do both, to which Catherine looks dejected and sceptical. With that out in the open, Catherine then chooses to gamble and answers another music question correctly, with very good deduction I must say. However, Catherine has now chosen chaos, giving Margaret the incorrect answer of Fur Q instead of iced tea. No new basement for you, I'm afraid. Margaret, quietly furious, asks her daughter, "And you knew that, did you?" Incidentally, the name Fur Q comes from a semi-obscure Chris Morris sketch where he plays the rapper behind the track Oozy Lover. Many thanks to Isaac on Twitter for pointing that one out, and I'll link that clip below because we all need a bit more Chris Morris in our lives. With the final round over, Lee Mack reminds us that they still go home with their original prize fund, and that might be enough for a trip to New Zealand. "One way, maybe," says Catherine, smiling. "Over my dead body," replies her mother, not even trying to hide her rage any longer. Careful what you wish for, Margaret. The host invites the Oakwoods to come down to the front of the stage, and Margaret tries to leave the booth, but the door slams itself shut. She commands Catherine to open the door, but her daughter just stares. Fuming in the background while Lee Mack closes the show in the foreground, we can use the subtitles to find out what Margaret is saying. "The doctors were right. I should have destroyed you when you were..." And then her head explodes, splattering the inside of the booth as Margaret's headless body slides to the floor. I noticed on Twitter there were at least some people watching who'd never seen Number 9 before and thought they were just watching a nice quiz show. Oh, to be a fly in the wall when that happened. Lee Mack flees the set, the big screen flickers, was that a hair we saw there very briefly? And Catherine just stares and stares. The credits roll, the cast and crew names are finally revealed, and the cheesy music skillfully transitions into the classic Number 9 theme. We also see the name of the director, Barbara Wiltshire, who directs many popular quiz shows, adding again to that sense of authenticity. Oh, and she also directed one episode of Inside Number 9 before this, and that episode was Deadline. Well done, Barbara, you've done it again. So, how can I describe 3x3 and the whole experience of watching it on the night? I have one word: mind-blowing. I thought it was an absolute blast and I was so happy to be a part of it this time. But what about everyone else? How many people switched off? And how many people switched on and had no idea what they were in for? As I'm writing this, the hashtags Inside Number 9, 3x3 and Lee Mack are still trending on Twitter, and we're only just getting the details of how they managed to pull it off. I really missed that Inside Number 9 podcast, by the way. As an episode, it's great. A real connect-the-dots supernatural tale disguised as an ordinary TV quiz show. And if you didn't find it compelling, once again I strongly urge you to re-watch it and pay very close attention to Margaret and Catherine the whole way through. This kind of thing is what makes Inside Number 9 the best show on TV, because 3x3 was so much more than just another television episode. This was an event. So many people are talking about this and Deadline again. Fantastic, and I deeply regret not seeing Deadline on broadcast. But if you're in the mood, you can always go and check my full analysis on that episode, hint hint. The thing is though, Deadline was a Halloween special and, for the most part, a live show, so viewers knew they were in for something special and to watch carefully and expect the unexpected. 3x3, however, came out of nowhere. Just a random episode of a random series where they just pranked us all for fun. And they build a fake episode with one of the most anticipated premises for a number 9 ever in order to do that, which is bold as fuck. I can't think of a single creative team working in television today who would have the guts and the vision to even try something like this. So well done, guys. Well, that went on a bit, didn't it? But enough from me, let's ask the audience. What did you think? Did you like it? Did you enjoy the spectacle of it? Or are you just sorry that we missed the bus? No shade if that's how you feel. As I said, a lot of people were really looking forward to it. But if you might enjoy a good laugh about the bus that might have been, why not take a look at the conversation going on in my community tab? People there have been posting fake plot points, guest cameos and interpretations all week, like when Reese says, "It's bus time," or Samuel L. Jackson shows up to deal with all the snakes on the bus, and how the bus itself was really a metaphor for life when you think about it. I've also noticed there's more than one comment congratulating the guys on daring to do full frontal nudity in the bus episode. But come on guys, it wasn't even nude day. Anyway, that's it for this week. Let's give a round of applause to all our contestants, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll be back for the final episode of Series 8 very soon. Bye for now.